Hey everybody, my name is Ernesto and I'm an alcoholic, and I'm excited and I'm terrified at the same time. It doesn't make a difference how much time in the program I've been or how many meetings I've attended, no matter where I speak, whether it's at Zoom or face to face. I was just telling a friend, it's still nerve-wracking until I settle down. So anyway, thank you very much for asking me to share. You know, right now it's in Miami, it's 11 or 10 p.m. Night. I'm usually asleep by 8 because my life has turned around a great deal. Just to give you a little background, first of all, my sobriety date is November 3rd, 1998. This is my second time in the program. The first time I came in 1994. When I thought that my only problem was, drugs. And when I went to a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous, I thought, oh my God, these people are freaks. My problem is just drugs. But I stayed despite my reservations. And a friend of mine who's still sober and has over 30 years now, he said, Ernesto, just stay sober. Don't pick up a drink or a drug. And we went to have dinner afterwards, after this meeting in 1994, where I picked up my white chip, and we were doing fellowship, and they went around and they're taking drink orders. And at that point, I said, I'll have a little red wine, because in my mind it's like, I'm not an alcoholic. You guys are the alcoholics. My problems are drugs. Then I was set, correctly on the right path, saying, no. You have to stay away from all substances. So reluctantly I did, and I was very angry, and I stayed sober, or at least abstinent from alcohol, for 2 years, and then I went back out because I was heartbroken. I met someone in those 2 years, actually within the first 90 days, and fell head over heels over this guy. And he was my everything. Nothing mattered, just his love, just his caresses, just all that wonderful feeling that I had. And then after a while, after almost a year, he let go of me and the relationship ended, and my whole life crumbled. And I had this reservation. Remember, I came in with a reservation in my head, like, I'm not alcoholic. My problem is this, just drugs. And I remembered at that point in time that I was not an alcoholic, I thought. I said, oh, I can drink. I don't have to go through this pain alone. And I drank. And it spiraled until I came back in 1998. Before I get into what happened then and where I am now, I'd like to tell you a little background of myself. So just to give you a little background of my family and dynamics and how alcohol came to be. I'm Cuban. We immigrated from Cuba in 1967. And I have an older brother, younger sister, mom and dad. And dad is an alcoholic. And he stopped drinking now because he's forced to stop drinking. He has dementia and Alzheimer. But he affected all of us. My brother has a problem with gambling. My sister has a problem with, she has an eating disorder and is morbidly obese. And of course, I am the alcoholic. My dad and I had always a horrible relationship. When I was very, very young, at the age of 6, he thought I should be changed. He saw in me something that I had no clue of. He thought I was going to turn out gay. So he took me to a doctor. This is back in the 60s. It took me to the doctor to change me. So he gave me they had me with all these hormone shots to change me, because they thought that would make me a normal boy. Later on in life, nothing happened other than the fact that they're all short and I grew way taller than all of them. That's the only thing that happened. Later on in life, when I was about 15 years old, my dad said to me, there are two things I will not accept in this house. And that is an addict and a homosexual. Well, I turned out to be both later on. And so our relationship, my dad's relationship and mine, have been very, very difficult. I drank at my dad for a very long time. So at the age of about 17, I went into the armed forces. In the armed forces, I learned how to be more gay than ever. I drank and learned how to really drink. People thought of me like, I was stationed in Alexandria, Louisiana, and they would see this gay guy because I really didn't cover any of my tracks. I just was me. And people would say, what's wrong with him? What is he wearing? I would wear like these Angora sweaters. And this is in the Air Force. Angora sweaters and these purple pants as I'm walking out of the barracks. And they say, what is his deal? And people say, oh, don't worry about him. He's Cuban. And I fell into that, I'm Cuban and I can do whatever I want. And met this girl and she became my beard. This is back when being gay in the armed forces was like, you'll be thrown out. So anyway, while I was in the Air Force, I was also busted with drugs. And I was put in drug rehab twice. And I talked my way out of it each and every time because I was an excellent airman in one hand, and then I was a mess in the other. And this repeated itself over and over throughout my life. I got out of the Air Force in 1981 and moved back to Miami. And in Miami in 1981, there was a sea of cocaine. And I fell into this sea of cocaine and swam through it when I met my first lover. And he and I got into so much trouble with cocaine. We lost everything. We were evicted. We had to move to his home in Virginia because I had no one to turn to here in Miami. Certainly not my father, who I had not spoken to for a very, very long time. And so I moved to Virginia and I lived in his mom's home in the attic. And he lived in the other part of the house. And we remained there for about a year or so while we were trying to get our stuff together, from all the consequences of all this cocaine. So I thought to myself, you know what? My problem is cocaine. As long as I don't do cocaine, everything is going to be okay. So I started to drink. My boyfriend and I, we moved from there to Washington, D.C. And in Washington, D.C., the drinking got much, much more intense. I am in the hotel industry. I work for luxury properties. And when I was in Washington, D.C., it was during the Ronald Reagan second inauguration. There was a lot of wealth and glamour in Washington, D.C., and a lot of liquor here and there and everywhere. And I was like, just like Bill W., I had arrived, I thought. So the drinking, the more drinking. And at the same time, during the 80s in Washington, D.C., many people were dying. They were dying of AIDS, and people were dying all around me. And I thought to myself, I better go get tested because, everybody's dying around me. And I just want to make sure that I'm negative. So I went and got tested, and December 1988, I came back positive. And in that time, HIV was considered a death sentence. So I told my boyfriend, look, I can't stay in DC. I have to go back to Miami. I want to die where my family is. But my boyfriend couldn't follow me because he had a bench warrant out in Miami. Before we left, he got busted for trying to buy drugs at a sting operation. And so he had a bench worn out, and he couldn't come back. So I said, no, I have to return to Miami. And I returned to Miami in 1989, basically to die. But back then in 1989, everybody was moving to Miami to die. Miami was, South Beach turned into like the gay mecca of the 90s, and all these great clubs. And now, mind you, when I first came out of the closet, I came out of the closet in 1977 to Donna Summers and discos and Quaaludes and all this kind of stuff. And I just loved that nightlife environment. And that nightlife environment went through the years. And when I moved back to Miami in the 90s, when I thought, I'm going to die, but I'm not going to wait for death. I'm going to party and meet it halfway. That was my plan. So I partied in South Beach. Lots of alcohol, lots of drugs, party. And then in 1994 is when I hit bottom, and my friend took me to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I thought my problem is only drugs. Fast forward, I went out because that guy broke my heart. And in 1998, just before I came in, I wanted to kill myself. Things have gotten so bad. The drinking had gotten so bad. I had gone through all my money. I didn't know what to do next. I felt trapped in my own life. And the only solution for me was to jump from the 4th story building that I live in. I live in the 4th story. And I had this idea that, things are going so bad, I'll probably survive that fall, and then I'll be a vegetable. So I didn't. Instead, I called that friend of mine, Claudio, who now has 30 years. And I said, hey, Claudio, I'm crying my eyes out. I am going on and on and on about, how horrible my life is. And he said, well, Ernesto, you know what to do. You've been sober before. You know what to do. And he hung up on me. And I cried and I sobbed. But I did know what to do. And that was the first time that I got on my knees and prayed. And I asked for guidance. Prior to that, a friend of mine, his name Mario, and I were friends for many years, and he was concerned about my drinking. And he called, this is before I hit bottom, he called one day from Tallahassee and said, hey, Ernesto, you've been in the program before. Can you give me a little advice? I said, absolutely, Mario. What can I do for you? He goes, I have a friend that that's drinking and drugging really hard, and I'm afraid he's going to die. So, and I need your opinion. What should I do? Because you've been in the program. And I said to him, my ego and like, oh, I know everything. I said, well, Mario, is he? And Mario said, yes, he is. I said, well, Mario, if you love him, it is your responsibility to tell your friend that he's a danger to himself and others, and he should seek help. So Mario said, oh, thank you. That's really good advice. So there was this pregnant pause. And then he said, Ernesto, you have a problem with drinking and drugging, and I'm afraid that for your life. Well, I was shocked. I felt exposed. I was shocked. I didn't speak to him for close to 6 months. And that's the kind of denial that I lived with until I finally hit bottom. I couldn't have someone tell me that I had a problem. I had to find out for myself. And luckily for me, and by the grace of God, I didn't die in the process. So in November 3rd, 1998, I hit a horrible bottom, and I just wanted relief. And I remembered that Alcoholics Anonymous gave me a sense of purpose. And I remember how good I felt when I went to a meeting. So I attended this meeting called the Coral Room in Miami, and a 12 noon meeting. And I walked in, and I was feeling very, very shaky. I was feeling very afraid. I was afraid of the financial consequences that I knew were coming my way. I was terrified. I didn't hear much in that meeting. I don't recall anything in the meeting other than the feeling that I felt. And I also recall that I found hope in that. I walked in and people were hugging and people were laughing and people were sitting and chatting, and I felt so different from everybody else. I felt like my world is over, and I'm crying inside and I'm sad, and everybody seemed so happy, and I wanted what they had, and I was willing to do whatever they were doing, and I didn't want to feel like I did. And as I walked into this room, this lady saw me, and she was an old timer, and she said, "Here, come, sit right here." She saw that deer in the headlights that we all have when we first come in, and we know the gig is up. And she said, "Sit right here. Everything's going to be okay." And for that 1 hour, everything was okay. Alcoholics Anonymous gave me peace of mind for that 1 hour, and I didn't pick up a drink or a drug that night. I came back the next day, and the same thing. I heard things this time around that I had not heard before. I heard, take the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth. And I was one of those, the first time around, I knew everything. Don't tell me about alcoholics because I'm not an alcoholic. Don't give me any solutions. I know what my problem is. So I had that horrible mixture of arrogance and ignorance. And I was unwilling to follow any suggestions. So the second time around was different. I was willing to do whatever anybody said to me. So they said, get a sponsor. And I got this sponsor called Marjorie. And Marjorie had a lot of time on me. And I thought time means that she is sober and she has all the answers. And I was mistaken. Marjorie was a perfect sponsor for me. It lasted less than 30 days. She was a perfect sponsor for me. She didn't work the steps. She didn't read the book. It was all blah, 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 blah. But I think that's the best that I was able to do at that time. And she was perfect. Then I met my second sponsor, who I called Ken. His name was Ken, a doctor, beautiful doctor. He was a hand surgeon. And I just fell head over heels over him. And he had what I wanted. And it had nothing to do with the program. I just wanted to be his husband. I wanted to get married to him. He had just a little more than a year at the time. And we worked the steps to the best of our ability, except for when I got to step 4. And I'm being thoroughly honest. I thought, I'm not going to show Ken this. I'm not going to sit here and explain to him that I've done these things because he's not going to like me. And then I realized I'm in trouble. I need to find another sponsor, a sponsor that I can trust and I can be fully open with. So I went to this meeting, and I heard the speaker, and this speaker, she was talking about, that she would go to a meeting with a gun in her boot. Because she knew that Alcoholics Anonymous didn't work, and she was going to blow her brains out in this meeting to prove to everybody, that the AA didn't work. Luckily for her, AA did work. And she had a great sponsor who got her through it. And so as I heard this speaker, I thought, oh my God, I want what she has. So I approached and I asked her, I said, hey, do you think you can sponsor me? And she said, yeah, I'll sponsor you. But are you willing to go to any length? And I said, absolutely. You tell me what to do and I'll do it. So we started to work the steps. And I have to tell you this, working the steps with this sponsor changed my life. she was very, very practical. She's passed away. She passed away a few years ago. And when she passed away, she had helped so many people throughout the country. And there were so many people visiting her on her deathbed saying thank you and their goodbyes. And I thought, this is truly AA. All these people whose lives she touched and helped. And one of the things that she said to me, she goes, Ernesto, always strive to do the 13th step. And I know a 13th step is when you die sober. That's the 13th step. And I thought, oh, okay. And she did a 13th step. She died sober. And there are speakers tapes all around with her, and I have a whole bunch of them. So whenever I want to hear her message and her laughter and humor, I listen to one of these tapes. But anyway, I started to work with her, and she was a no-nonsense gal. She was this hard-nosed lesbian who just wouldn't put up with us sissies, as she would say. She said, you sissies, all you do is complain. We're going to work the steps, and we're going to get through this. And so I started working with the steps with her. Now, mind you, in early recovery, I found myself feeling very, very lonely. I was lonely, one, because I couldn't be around my old friends. They were too much of a trigger, and I didn't want anything from them because I knew that if I hung out with them, I would eventually go back out. But I was too afraid to make friends in the group. I was afraid of everybody. I didn't want to approach anyone. So I found myself very lonely. And one of the things that my sponsor said, she goes, call me and share your feelings, and we'll discuss things over and reason things out. So I took it, like, yeah, all right, I'll do that. So I was feeling lonely, and, in my eyes, she could do no wrong. And she was, the guru. She had all the answers. And I would call her, hey, artist, can we talk? And she would say, yeah. So what do you want? I said, well, I'm feeling lonely. And she goes, what? I said, yeah, I'm feeling really lonely. And she said, Ernesto, do you know why you feel lonely? And I thought, oh my gosh, she's going to give me some wonderful pearl of wisdom, and I'm going to take it with me. And I said, well, why do I feel lonely? She goes, well, Ernesto, you're feeling lonely because you're alone. Go out there and make friends. I said, damn. She goes, go to a fellowship, meet people. Everybody there has the same fears as you do. Get over those fears and just approach another alcoholic. Even if they have the same time or less time, it doesn't make a difference. You have one day, and you can you can give that experience to another alcoholic. Okay, so time goes on. Then again, I call her because I had two feelings that were constantly nagging me: loneliness and boredom. And I would call my sponsor, artist, can we talk? And she would say, yeah, what is the problem, Ernesto? And she was from Oklahoma, so she had this heavy duty twang. And I said, well, I'm bored, artist. This thing in recovery is boring. And she goes, oh, Ernesto, I understand. And she says, Ernesto, do you know why you're bored? And I, again, set myself up for it. Why am I bored, artist? And I was expecting pearls of wisdom. And she says, well, you're bored because you're boring. Because how can you possibly be bored with all the things that there are to do? You can read a book. You can call another alcoholic. You can meet someone. You can go to a meeting. You can do a number of things. Of course, as a newcomer, all that did was piss me off. Later on, today, I see the wisdom behind those suggestions. And the wonderful thing about that sponsor is that she was a no-nonsense, very practical. It's about the steps. It's about recovery. It's about not drinking. One of the things that she said to me when we first started to work was, Ernesto, I want you to call me. And by the way, her sponsor said exactly the same thing to her. She said, I want you to call me if you're about to drink, and we'll talk things over, reason things out. And if you want to drink afterwards, do so. I want you to call me if you're about to kill yourself. We can talk things over, reason things out. And then afterwards, if you still want to kill yourself, that's on you. Or if you're going to get married, call me if you're going to get married. We'll talk things over, reason things out. And those are the 3 requirements she gave me. And to this day, I pass it on to my sponsees. One sponsee didn't. He got married. He's back out. I don't know if there's a correlation between one or the other, but he certainly wasn't ready. He had not finished the steps, and it was a bad idea in my opinion. But anyway, so I work with artists, and we started to work the steps. And as we worked the steps, something magical was happening. My life that was very black and white started to become, technicolor. It was the first time that I sat down and really, with courage, wrote down stuff about myself, and people that I harmed, and then more importantly, looked at my part in it. I've never done that before, and she helped me through that. I didn't know that I would be admitting to all this later on, but when we get to the 5th step, there I was admitting to it all, and I couldn't back it out, because not only did I write it down, I also told her and told my higher power and admitted it to myself. And that sinking feeling that came over me that hour later when I was in my room, just contemplating life, and also contemplating what had just happened and what I discussed with another human being and admitted to, horrified me and showed me exactly who I've been up to that point. And I knew that the gig was up, because before I had always lived my life by my intentions rather than looking at my actions. My intentions were always good. My intentions were never to harm anybody. My intentions were not to steal from you. I just needed the money. My intentions were not to lie to you. I just was, protecting your feelings. But my actions told a different story. I was a thief and I was a liar. I didn't know how fearful I was until I did a Fearless with my sponsor. When I said, we write our list, that we make a list of our fears, and we ask ourselves why we had them. The first thing that popped up is, I'm afraid of dying alone. I'm afraid of this. I'm afraid of, and it turns out I'm afraid of death. Everybody's afraid of death, but I was terrified of death. But yet I was living my life as if to kill myself. Another thing that I put down on there is that I'm afraid that I'm not going to find my love, and that I will get old and be alone. Well, you know what? I'm old and alone, and everything is okay. Nothing horrible has happened in the process. I work with sponsees that also have had those problems, those fears and those concerns. And as we work the steps, we realize these are just pointless. They're just fears, nothing else. They don't have to govern us. The sex inventory really just screwed with me, because I said to her, artist, how am I supposed to do this? I'm a gay man. Do you know what kind of a whore I've been up to this point? And she goes, that's perfectly okay. Just, if you remember their names, just write it down. How you were inconsiderate, and were you selfish? And all these 9 other questions that appear in the big book. And as I wrote this down, I felt like, oh my God, I don't want to be that person anymore. I don't want to be that person anymore. And when she said, well, Ernesto, you never have to be that person again, and God will help you. He moves mountains, but you have to bring a shovel. You have to take some kind of action, and be better. So anyway, where I am today, I was able to do all the steps with artists. She's helped me a great deal. I've carried the message to other alcoholics, and I continue to carry those messages to alcoholics. And let me tell you something. On page 14 and 15 of the big book, it says, for if an alcoholic failed to perfect and enlarge his spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice. For others, he could not survive certain trials and low spots ahead. And since coming to recovery, I've had no trials or low spots for the most part. I've had stuff happen, but no really life-changing things up until just before the pandemic. Just before the pandemic, Mom was diagnosed with Lewy bodies dementia, and Dad is has Alzheimer, and so we were locked down. My parents can't go to the doctor. They're untreated dementia, untreated Alzheimer. Things are getting worse, and for a whole year, this went on. It progressed and progressed. Mom now lives in this psychedelic world, and I join her in the psychedelic world. And we have a great time in her world, but she's no longer the mom that I recall. I love her dearly, but I either have to join her in her world or not be there at all. Dad, on the other hand, he can't move out of a chair. He's angry, bitter. He's always been an angry, bitter man. But now this disease that he has amplified his anger, his bitterness, and his hatred. And sometimes I look at him and it looks like a demon. And I think of The Exorcist, you know, that where that demon is inside her and she's spewing out all sorts of horrible things. And that's how that is. And I never know what to expect. When I was on step 8, my dad was on the top of the list. There's the people that I knew I owed an amends to, but I couldn't see myself ever making an amends because he had done so many horrible things to me throughout life. Of course, I did my share, but I wasn't willing to look at that. I was just focused on what he did to me and how much he hurt me. And he remained on that top of that list for a very, very, very long time until on my 9th year, I just couldn't take it anymore. And I finally made amends to him. Luckily, I just cleaned up my side. He, did the best he could, but I cleaned up my side and was able to forgive him. Now I find myself in a situation where I am the parent. And every Sunday, tomorrow, I show up. I cook lunch for them. I have to change Dad diapers. I'm basically a parent. And I sometimes, like last Sunday, was a horrible, horrible Sunday. And I just have to dig really deep down inside and find some kind of compassion for Dad rather than fight back with him. It's just pointless. The reason I say that is because I don't think I could be present for Dad hadn't I been sober and in Alcoholics Anonymous with the program that has given me the opportunity and the power to be able to forgive another human being. I show up, I suit up, and I show up for Dad. I do service with Mom and Dad. That's what I do. I do service with sponsees. They come to my home. We read from the big book, just like I was taught how I went through the steps. We read from the big book, and we find the solution in those first 164 pages. No matter what the problem is, somehow, some way, shape, or form, the solution is in those 164 pages. And that's what I love about Alcoholics Anonymous and this blueprint to life that it's given me. I went through COVID myself. My life shrunk. I stopped going to the gym. I would only stay in my home and go straight to work because since I'm taking care of my parents and they're so elderly and frail, I didn't want to run the risk of infecting them. And ironically enough, I get infected at work. And I'm bedridden for close to 4 weeks. And I got through with it. Alone, no. Alone in my home, yes. Alone in the world, no. I had sponsees checking up on me all the time. I had friends, family, everybody was checking. I was never alone. Imagine, I think about it, if I had been using and being that sick, what would I have done? I'm glad that that's not the case, but I'm just so very grateful for Alcoholics Anonymous and what it's given me. So now I'm working with a sponsee who's trying to get through the steps, and we're on the 4th step, and I love working with a sponsee and watching them grow and watching them go through the process that I went through of growth and change and notice and realizing that the person that they are or who they thought they are is not really who they are, and then they bring out the real person and try to minimize the bad and bring out the best. And that's what the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous has done for me, and I appreciate that. I haven't had a desire to drink for some time, but let me tell you, every now and then I have these stupid thoughts out of nowhere. Watching Family Guy, out of nowhere, this idea comes like, you've been sober enough, the steps long enough, all the steps, the first 164 pages. I'm sure, Ernesto, you can drink successfully. And that freaks me out. And I call my sponsor and we talk things over, we reason things out. And then it also, my sponsor reminds me, you know what? It's always going to be like this. An alcoholic is the only individual that's obsessing about the day that one day they'll drink again successfully. And I know I've lost the ability to drink successfully. So anyway, I'm very, very grateful to have done service. For me, this is, like 3 o'clock in the morning, it feels like. But I'm grateful to be here, and I'm really appreciative of the opportunity to carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. Thank you.